Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad you could join us today for EMDA's webinar, Stronger Together, Connecting Teams, Tools, and Traditions. At EMDA, we're always focused on helping our members build stronger and more connected business, whether that's through relationships, shared knowledge, or tools, just to keep the operations running smoothly. So today's session Today's session is all about bringing those elements together. So we're excited to be joined by Christian Schmidt from Innovative Cloud Solutions, presenting Acumatica. So Christian, go ahead and get started for us.
Thanks so much, Celeste. It's a real joy and a pleasure to be here with you. It's this afternoon. Thanks for coming out, and thanks for walking through all this with me. Like I said, or like Celeste said, my name's Christian. I'm a solutions engineer here with Innovative Cloud Solutions. Fancy title just means that my job is to learn as much as I can about you and the other companies that we would work with in a evaluation cycle, and then run all that information into demos that look like actually a day in your life and not a day in the life of Widget Company 03. So the demo we'll be doing today is a little bit more generalized. And in an evaluation cycle, we would definitely want to take the time to really tailor it to your processes, your needs, and your little vertical of the industry. The way we'll spend our time together today, we'll spend a little bit of time first just introducing Acumatica. We'll talk a little bit about why Acumatica and sort of the core problem that Acumatica can solve, that is the disconnected business and the idea of data silos and having multiple sources of competing truth. From there, we'll look at the navigation and the UI and some common reporting tools. I like to call that all the grammar of Acumatica, really the way it's going to look and feel, whether you're coming to it from a financial role, from an operational role, from an executive role, or any other role you can imagine. A lot of what we're going to see in that section is going to lay the groundwork for how the look and feel is going to work. From there, we're going to dig in deep into our MRP workflow, our material requirements planning workflow. This is sort of the portion of our manufacturing edition. There's a version of it for distribution as well. But the portion of our distribution manufacturing offerings that asks the question, what do I need to purchase and what do I need to manufacture, and when and why? Given all the supply sources, given all the demand sources I know of already, what do I need to build? What do I need to procure? So we'll start at the end there. We'll see what the final screen there looks like, and then we'll take a look at some of the factors that build up to that final screen. So the settings we can set on the item master. We can look at the idea of forecasting within the system. And from there, once we answered the question, what do we need to build and when, we can look into some more granular inventory management features. We'll look into inventory reporting and see some other settings on that stock item master. See how we can lot serial track, see how we can see how much of what we have where. We'll look at allocations, how we can say this item is for this sales order and nothing else can touch it. And then on the production side, we'll take a look at BOMs and production, see what that looks like in Acumatica, and then do a real live material issue. So just like we can do a hard allocation, we can do a hard material issue to a production order. From there, we'll pause for questions and answers, and that will be a good afternoon. So let's start here at the beginning. Acumatica and the connected business. Why even would someone consider coming on and joining the Acumatica family? Well, so many companies, so many distributors, so many manufacturers we talk to really know their stuff. They know their industry. They know how to manufacture and how to distribute that thing that they specialize in, even if it is a really specialized product or a really wide range of really specialized products. The human capital is there, the knowledge is there, the experience is there, but what's not there is the integration. Often firms will be running tech stacks that really weren't designed to be working with each other, or they'll be basing themselves on legacy systems that were designed on the aesthetic sensibilities and the computing power of the 1980s and not the mid-2020s like we're in, and you can see some of the results there. We're rekeying data entry, which can cause manual error and at the very least cost us a lot of time. We have those errors. We have data silos that we can't all see the information we need to see. The reporting, information sharing across departments is very, very difficult, and especially for those on legacy systems. As those systems get older and older and older, they get even harder to maintain. And that's where Acumatica comes in. Acumatica, as a modern cloud-based ERP, is a one-stop shop really for every business function in the modern day business world. The idea is we are uniting everything under one roof, built on our accounting module. Everything flows back to accounting, everything needs to, but then everything else sits on top of that in ways that flow back and forth between each other, so we have good visibility, we have linked documents, and we're able to see an order or a customer, an opportunity really flow the entire way through cradle to graduation in one system. That means the updates are instantaneous. It means we're not checking multiple systems to figure out which information is correct. It means that we're not wasting time and exposing ourselves to error with all these manual. We have better reports to maintain. Acumatica as a cloud-based system is also accessible on a mobile app or a tablet or really anywhere you can get internet access. So there's lots of very good benefits here to bring everything here under one umbrella. And with that in mind, I'm going to pull up my Acumatica demo instance, and we're going to take a look at some screens. So I will click here to my home dashboard. We will enjoy the color just kind of washing over us. But before we talk about the color, I want to talk a little bit about the user interface and the navigation. We'll start over here on the left, looking at some of these tabs here, and we're going to see a first element of Acumatica's design philosophy. That is, Acumatica wants to make it very, very easy for you to get where you're going, especially if you're going there very often. One way that Acumatica does that is with these tabs on the side. They're called workspaces. Every workspace is just a collection of tasks or screens or reports that relate to one particular business function. So we have estimating, which the engineers might be doing, or our purchasing department would have their own workspace as well. The idea is everybody has a workspace. Everybody has very quick accessibility to what they need. And the things that they use most often, you can see that I have some things starred here. Those will land in an individual. So this is, again, custom by individual and user configurable favorites tab. So the things that I use most often are right here. I don't have to go fishing for them. Now, you'll note for a moment that this is a lot of tabs. It's a lot of information to sort through. Thankfully, that's not the normal user experience. You'll notice up here that my login name is here literally admin. I'm logged in here as the superest user there is. There are not permissions that I don't have, which means I can see everything. Normally, in an implementation cycle, we would make sure to get our user permissions and our role-based permissions, which Acumatica has very, very robust options for, to get our user and role-based permissions keyed in just right so that everybody is seeing exactly what they need to, but they're not getting bogged down and having to look at other people's workflows. So you might only see one workspace or two workspaces or three workspaces, really whatever that role needs to see. The idea here is we want to make it easy now to have lots of different kinds of roles, lots of different people in one system. And that's not the only way that Acumatica expresses that element of design philosophy or that goal that we want to have as many people as possible in the system. The other way is by our unlimited user licensing model. So most modern systems license themselves on a per seat basis. You add a person, that's your licensing costs. Acumatica doesn't work that way. We don't want to give people disincentive to grow or disincentive to collaborate. Once you get past our small business edition, you can have as many seats as you need for no additional charge. Lets you grow freely and collaborate again freely. We believe the best business happens when there's teamwork. So much then for our unlimited user licensing model, for our role-based permissions, for some of these workspaces. We're seeing that Acumatica is very good at getting us where we're going often very quickly, but we don't always get the luxury of going where we're going often, right? That's where our universal search comes in. Say it's tax time again, and I did my 1099s last year, but I can't remember where in all these workspaces those screens are. So I can just come in here and type in 1099, and all of those 1099 forms are just going to pop right up for me. And not only the 1099 screens, but also we'll search through all of our transactions and profiles that happen to have 1099 in them. So here's a vendor with 1099 in the title. Here's a contact of that vendor. Here's a whole bunch of records with 1099 in the record number. So again, we're getting very quick searching through a lot of information in this system. It's very easy to find. We're also files that we attach on either a record level or on a line item level. You can see we have some 1099s there as PNGs. And we can also search then through our help topics. Acumatica has very, very robust help documentation. It's all wiki-based, so in an implementation cycle, the end user can then edit that. If you have particular processes or particular pictures you want your operators to be able to see, all of that can be customized or configured in your help settings. We also have our help topics over here that are going to give you help articles suggested based on the screen you're on. So I always like to say, if you know either where you're going or if you know where you are, getting to the help documentation is very, very easy. And it's good documentation. I use it in my demo prep all the time. The last thing I'll mention here in this user interface is our multiple company, multi-branch structure. I know that many distributors and many manufacturers, for whatever reason, operate as many distinct entities. Maybe that's for better reporting, better segmentation of tasks, liability purposes. Maybe that comes out of a history of acquisitions, a million good reasons to work in a company branch structure. And you can see here that Acumatica can accommodate whatever company branch structure you are using. We can segment reporting based on this, so we'll get a P&L for the retail branch and a separate P&L for the wholesale branch. We can also run permissions, so we can constrain someone's visibility down to only the branch that they should be able to see, in addition to only the screens within that branch that they should be able to see. So much then for the user interface. We're going to see me today doing a lot of clicking around in these workspaces in the universal search. And with that, I think we're ready to move on to the dashboard, to our data reporting structures. At this point, I always like to talk about ketchup bottles. I don't know about you, but I remember 8-10 years ago, they invented this new kind of ketchup bottle that you would squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, and no ketchup would come out until you reach like some critical squeeze point, and then all the ketchup would come out and you'd ruin your neighbor's shirt. I like to say ERP is the same way, in that it doesn't matter how much information we have in the system if we can't get it out quickly and easily. Thankfully, the dashboard and another tool we'll talk about in a moment called the generic inquiry, or the generic inquiry, the GI, are two very powerful ways of getting data out of the system. We'll start here with this dashboard. You see here that a dashboard is a collection of widgets. A widget is a data visualization. Nothing really earth-shattering about that. What makes Acumatica's dashboards distinct, though, is the degree to which they are user-level editable. So if I maybe want to see a slightly different statistic or maybe slightly different colors giving me warnings here on these widgets here, all I need to do is click here into my design menu, and then I can click into a widget. And you'll see here these widgets are run on drop-down menus. There's no SQL here. There's no other technical coding going on. If you can run a drop-down menu, you can create your own widgets. You can create your own dashboards. In fact, many of our end users of Acumatica do a lot of dashboard creation. You can see how many we have just based in the system here out of the box. But many Acumatica users find it very helpful to either edit these dashboards or to branch them off and make like a Jane's month-end close dashboard, just to see the whole process right there on one screen, or to see a shipment processing dashboard to see, again, the whole process right there in one screen. That's a very straightforward process that doesn't even require development or consulting hours. That's something you can do as the end user. So we're seeing configurability really emerge as a core Acumatica design philosophy that we're going to see again over and over and over today. The last core element of Acumatica design philosophy that I want to mention here is the idea of drillability. The idea that if I'm looking at a piece of data, I should be able to click on it and see what data is behind that data. For example, let's look at this sales order trend by month graph. We see that there's a bit of a dip in our sales in December, and I wonder, well, why is that? It's Christmas, right? And that's when everybody's buying farm equipment for each other, right? Like just slap a bow on it and happy 16th birthday, son. Here's a combine. So I'm confused why our sales dipped in December. I can just click on that bar like you saw that I did, and Acumatica is going to take me straight now to the sales order screen, already filtered down to my December orders. So I can take a look through here and figure out, well, what's going on? Am I seeing my usual orders? Am I not seeing my usual orders? Very, very powerful drillability, very powerful reporting there. Now, while we're here, I'll mention we're looking at our first GI. I'll actually switch to my unfiltered version with a good 10,000 records, but we're looking here at our very first GI. A GI you can think of as like a live query back to the SQL databases behind Acumatica, back into the server. Or you can just think about it like a live Excel spreadsheet that's displaying your data in the way you want to see it. So you can do almost anything that you'd imagine being able to do in Excel here. If I want to move columns around and move that over there or move it back, I can do that easily. If I want to remove a column, maybe the date isn't that important for me, I can go ahead and remove that date. Now it's gone. The date is actually very important, so I'm going to leave it there. If I want to filter on particular values, maybe I only, I don't want to see 10,000 orders. I only want to see my orders that are open, and then I only want to see my really big orders where I might have a quantity greater than, or rather an order total greater than $10,000. So now I have just in two filters sliced and diced my data down from 10,000 to a mere 400. And you can imagine how easy it is to lay on another filter and really get to the particular records I'm going for very, very quickly. And as far as the actual fields go here, we have our column manager. But if there's anything that's not already in the column manager, that's another thing that's very straightforward to add. We can go in here to edit generic inquiry. And just like we can edit a dashboard widget based on drop-down menus, we can also add fields and manipulate our GI here, not with SQL code, but with drop-down menus. If you can run drop-down menus, you can write one of these GIs. So again, very, very powerful user-level configurability in Acumatica, showing you your data quickly and easily in the way you want to see it. The last piece of UI I'll talk about before we get to the MRP workflow is right over here, these side panels. Like I said, Acumatica is a browser-based system, and that means that if you're working in Acumatica all day, you might actually get quite a nice list of tabs up here, right? And that annoyed some people. So a few years ago, there was a big movement on Acumatica's community forum. So Acumatica has a very, very active community forum. There's a big movement there to fix that tab bloat problem. And Acumatica, the company, the people who published the Acumatica software, they saw that, and like they very often do, they listened to the user feedback, and they installed, or they created, this side panel feature where I can, on one screen, select a record, and I can pull into, say, the customer information for that record. And now, without needing even to go onto another screen, I have all the information about good old Alta Ace there. Or if I want to learn about ABC Studios, I can just click to the next record, and this will automatically update to show me now the information about ABC Studios. You can see that we have several other side panels here. I won't click through every one of them, but I'm sure you can imagine how powerful this is to get you to the information that you need, again, quickly and easily. So with that in mind, I'd like to transition now to talk a little bit about MRP, about answering that question, what do we need to buy and when? This is a core question for so many complex manufacturers, for manufacturers that really build really advanced products that take lots of different components, and then all these different components need to be built into different sub-assemblies. Some of those are stocked, some of those go straight into finished goods. To actually sit down and look at our list of sales orders and flip through them one by one and figure out, well, to sell this in a month, I need to be able to build all these things, but for all these things, I need to go and purchase all these things. It's a very complicated process. Doing it by hand at scale is impossible. And that is where Acumatica's MRP engine comes in. I'll start with this slide here. The MRP engine begins by looking at every demand source and every supply source in the system, whether that's forecasting, whether that's reorder point, safety stock, min-max quantities we have on the item record. We'll take a look at those, whether that's a production schedule or existing production or sales or transfer orders. It's going to take a look at all of that and ask the question, well, what is still short? So it's going to take all that information, munch it all up in a way that is multi-leveled. That is, if we need something to build something, it's going to blow down all the way to the point where we're just buying finished, where we're buying the components, or we're manufacturing the true components. It's going to blow down the whole way. It's also going to be time sensitive. So every record, we can assign a particular lead time. Maybe it takes us 5 days to get these parts in, or we should assume it's going to take 2 days to get a work order through the shop to build these particular parts. MRP is going to take those lead times and bump those start dates back accordingly. So now we don't even know, we don't merely know what to build, we know when to build it. So it's accomplished just in time, and we don't have stock sitting on the shelf forever. The process is also automatable, so we can just set it to run every morning, so it's finished when we come in. Once MRP finishes munching on all those numbers, what it spits out then, like I've said, are those purchase suggestions and the production suggestions that are going to help us know what to produce and when. Let's see how it works. So I click in here to my inventory planning display. Do need to spell things right, and I'm very bad at typing and spelling things right in front of people. If I click here in my inventory planning display, you're going to see some of this magic happening. In fact, I want to focus here on these hinges because I think it tells a really, really good story. You can see here that looking at these two lines, 462 in order to build this production order, and we can click into that and see that this production order here is for a cabinet that we need to build on, we need to start this on 6/2 so that we can finish it on 6/6. You can see those lead times already working themselves out here in the system. But in order to start this on 6/2, we need all the parts there, right? Well, in order to get these hinges there for 6/2, that means we need to start transferring them based on those lead times on 5/29. In fact, these are set to transfer from SMware to wholesale warehouse. So we don't manufacture these at wholesale, we manufacture these at SMware. Well, in order to transfer them from SMware to wholesale, we need to manufacture them at SMware first. So in order to transfer them and have them there, in order to transfer them on 5/29 to get them to wholesale by 6/2, well, we need to start building them here in SMware at 5/28. So we see how this is all very, very time sensitive and gives us a very clear picture of what we need to build and when in order to meet the orders that are ahead of us. And not only the orders, in fact, if I sort this just based on hinge, you can see that we also have recommendations here to satisfy safety stock levels or other transfer demands, again, for safety stock. So we have, again, very, very clear recommendations of what, how, where, and when to make stuff. Now, we could choose to consolidate this. You'll note that we have 2 of these hinge orders for a total of 13, but they're 2 different lines. We can choose to consolidate them, and not only on the same day over whatever time fence we'd like. maybe we only want to cut one purchase order to this vendor every week or every month, and we want to make sure that everything we need for the next month is on there. We can consolidate, and that's just fine. I just have mine to set for a little bit more visibility, so it shows exactly where those are coming from here. So with that in mind, I will go ahead and actually show sort of the power of our inventory planning display to actually process some of this through. Maybe this spotlight here, we're going to need that pretty soon. If I want to purchase that, I can go ahead and check that and then hit the purchase button. That's going to pull up my create purchase order screen. I'm going to tell you what vendor we usually buy this from. We'll say Azure Hardware Limited. And then I can just create, and it'll think for a moment, and that's going to cut a purchase order, or at least create the purchase order that now purchasing gets to look at and approve and send out so that we can get our spotlight in. Once we've done that, you'll see that this spotlight line falls off. So now I, as an inventory planner, have done my job. I can move on to thinking about this hammock swing or about these hinges, because there's a lot that needs to happen with them too, you can see. So much for seeing MRP work. Let's take a look at some of the settings that are behind it. I'll click, since we're talking about these hinges, I'll just click into here. And if I click over to the inventory planning tab, you can see where some of this stuff is coming from. You might remember we had a safety stock of 50. So there's where we're saying it's a safety stock of 50. In order to manufacture this, we have that manufacturing lead time of 2. All these settings too, you remember, are warehouse specific. We don't manufacture this in wholesale. We only manufacture it somewhere. So even on our warehouses tab, we're able to click into our item warehouse settings and set up those settings very particularly, exactly how we want to handle every item in every warehouse. So those are just a few of the settings here on the stock item record that are driving that. I want to click now into something else that also drives our MRP, and that's our forecasting. So I will click here to generate forecasts. Now I'm sure that MRP would work great if we actually knew what orders we would get for the rest of eternity, right? But sometimes we just need to forecast. We need to make our best educated guess. What orders are we going to get? And we need to build to those forecasts so we can know we have at least something on the shelf when those orders come in. And here's one way to do that on our generate forecast screen. You'll note that all of this can also be exported to Excel. So you can do your forecasting magic in Excel if you prefer, and then you can upload it right back. Anywhere you see these two symbols, you can do those export import operations, or we can just do it here. You see that I've got my list of SKUs here. I could filter out to only be dealing with some of them, but I'll do it all of them for now. We'll say, I think last time I did this, I did a 30% growth rate. Let's take a slightly more conservative 25% growth rate. Maybe I want to look at 5 years of history, and I want to weight those more recent years just a little bit heavier than years that are more far into the past. You'll see that I can also calculate. I'm going to calculate here just by years to make the calculation a little bit easier. But I could also calculate by month to have much more granular forecasting that is a little bit more helpful as we're trying to ask the question, how much do we need when? And you can see that I can also do this by particular customer. So I can forecast, well, what does, we talked about Alta Ace, what does Alta Ace need this year? Or what does ABC Studios need this year, just based on historical patterns? We can also set our forecasts either on the whole level here or on the record level there to be dependent. That is, do we want the forecast demand to be consumed when sales orders comes in? Different ways of thinking about inventory planning, just showing that Acumatic can handle it however you think about it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit calculate here. And the system will think for a moment, doing all of this time series analysis, doing all of the math, and then it's going to spit out all of my new forecasts for every stock item I have in the system because I didn't filter anywhere. You see, this is location dependent. So here for these Lego sets, I have some in retail, some in wholesale. The same can be said about the computers. We know how much we either sold or consumed on production orders last year, and then we're able to see, based on that, what do we think we're going to need this year? We can see, especially for this AA computer, based on the time series analysis, well, we are going to need quite a bit this year. Some of these are just smaller changes, but some are very large changes indeed. Once we think we have this to where we like it, we want to say, yes, forecast this. All we've got to do is check what we like and hit process or process all, and that will then add those forecasts to MRP as valid demand sources. So much, I think, for generating forecasts. A word about automation. So our inventory planning runs based on this regenerate inventory planning screen. When we're ready to see a new version of our MRP screen, we need to actually come in here and hit process. And this is where the system will munch all those numbers and spit out all those recommendations like we've seen. And you can see it processing the first pass. You'll actually see it running several levels like we've been talking about. So we know in order to build this, we need to build this, and we need to buy this for that. So you'll see that it's working on many different levels, but you'll also see that it takes a little bit of time. My demo site's relatively small. It takes 20 seconds. In a full production site, it might take a little bit longer, but that's okay because we can automate this. If I click in here, anywhere you see this symbol, that lets us throw on an automation schedule. So we can tell it to say, run this operation 11 o'clock every night when everybody's out of the system and we just want to have it finished for the next morning. And then I come in as the scheduling supervisor, and then I have my punch list right there for me first thing in the morning. So much then for MRP. I want to pull up our agenda slide again just to remind us where we are going with the remainder of our time here. So we're through our MRP workflow. We want to think now a little bit more about our inventory management workflows. So we're going to look a little bit at that stock item record. We're going to see how we can lot serial trace things. We're going to see how we can figure out how much of what we have where. We're going to talk valuation. We're going to talk data tracking. From there, we'll assign particular items to particular sales orders, and then we'll actually make some stuff. After MRP went to all that trouble to tell us what to make when, we'll actually make some stuff. And that's going to be very, very exciting. So let's start then with our stock item record. I'm going to click in here to our AmCurig. Note again my use of that universal search. Now I know that many of you are heavy equipment manufacturers, and you might not be producing Keurig coffee machines, but I think that most agricultural settings also run on coffee just as much on heavy machinery. So you can just imagine this AmCurig is that big combine, or any other big truck that you're thinking of selling out to your customers here. The first thing to notice here on the stock item record is that every item has an item class. In this case, manufactured finished goods. We have some other manufactured ones, purchased, subassemblies, also some that have nothing to do with manufacturing, some food items. Really, my demo site has all the item classes you could imagine. Those are, of course, configurable. We would, in a implementation cycle, make sure that we have your item classes set the way that is going to be most helpful for you. These item classes then drive most of these other settings. So based on saying this is a finished good, the system is going to know to plan this based on MRP. It's going to know that the warehouse defaults are going to be there. It's going to know some other things here along the way. Of course, all of those settings are going to be overridable on a particular item level, but at the very least, having an item class to run those template settings makes it a lot easier to enter new item masters, new SKUs into our database as we begin manufacturing more things and selling more things, or as we start manufacturing that in new and different and better ways, and we need different items in order to do that. Very easy to add items here because of that item class. We can also segment out our reporting based on item class. So if we want to know an inventory balance by finished good versus by subassembly, or if we want to get a P&L by industrial equipment and then compare that to our electronics and computers item classes. Again, we can segment reporting based on item classes as well. So item classes are a very powerful feature in Acumatica that makes it very easy to enter items and then gives us very clear reporting on the other side. The next thing I want to mention here is our lot serial class. In many operations, both in distribution and manufacturing, it's very important to serialize your items, especially if you're doing a large variety of different kinds of things, where you need to be able to know who got what item, because all these are very high-touch items, very complex items. They might even be slightly different one to the next. You need to know which number this is, right? And then if there's a defect, we need to be able to trace that back to a defect in the lot of the raw material. And then we need to go back to our supplier and try to figure out what was going on there. So all of these item class, all of these stock items that we have in the system, we can assign a lot or a serial class to, whether we're tracking serials and issuing them when received, or even if we're issuing serials when they're used. We can do the same thing with lots. Lots of other good settings there as well. The format of the numbers as well is totally arbitrary. You can see that. You can see that here. Some things can expire. Maybe there's plastic pieces that only last so long on the shelf. So again, lots of very powerful information that we can store about these lot serial numbers. We can also then assign information to a particular lot class, or to a particular lot, or to a particular serial number with these lot serial specific attributes. So there's the 4 that I have set up. When we need to set up more for a particular one of these lot serial classes, that's a very easy thing to do as well. And then we can do reporting on that too. So we're talking a little bit here about lot serial classes, about knowing what we have where, and probably the best use case for knowing what we have where is needing to know what on the shelf is on which shelf, what warehouse is this, and what serial numbers do we have. Well, we can click right over here to inventory summary. You'll see that I'm using one of these side panels to access another screen based on here. We see that we only keep these Keurigs in row 1, shelf 1 in wholesale. And we can see if I expand that by lot serial number, there's a lot of them here, so it's take a moment to pull them up, but we can see all the different cereals here that are in row 1, shelf 1. If we want to see how this might look for a lot traced number, I can switch this to a Powerade. And we can see that we have this Powerade in many different lots in many different locations, and we can see exactly how much we have, whether some of this is available for shipment, some of it's booked, some of it's allocated, which is a great segue to talk about allocations. We'll talk about that in just a sec. There's other really good information pieces here too, like if we want to see inventory transaction history, that's right here on the stock item record. We can see in a time-fenced way how this item has been moving. We can also take a look, while we're talking about historicals, we can do like a historical inventory valuation, very helpful at the end of the month when we're closing the books. We need to see, well, at the end of last month, what was the valuation of my inventory? I need to make sure that that ties inventory to GL and figure out what to do if it doesn't. So again, very, very powerful reporting. But so much for the actual item classes, the item class, the stock item record, and some of the inventory tracking that we can do. I want to show an example sales order next and show how we can allocate specific materials to it, especially specific lot numbers or specific serial numbers. So if I come in here to a sales order, I'm just going to enter a new one, say the good old Alta Ace wants to buy one of our take a moment to save a new record. One of our AA machines. This is an injection molding machine, but imagine it's, again, agricultural equipment instead. We'll say one of these. And then when I click here into line details, I can allocate it specifically. And if I want to allocate a specific lot serial number of this machine, I can allocate serial number 7 and hit OK. And now the system is going to know serial number 7 might be on the shelf, but it is not available. Do not ship it. Do not use it in the manufacturing process. It is hard allocated to this sales order. And if we ever want to use it, we need to go in and unallocate it and figure out, well, what are we doing with the sales order now? So that's one way to make hard allocations and make sure that our inventory is attributed to the right sources, and make sure that we're not using inventory in one process or for one purpose that we're going to need next week for a different purpose. We can also do that in bulk. If I come into manage sales allocations, I can select, make some allocations, do that in the wholesale warehouse. Now you can see every order that I have open in my wholesale warehouse. And if I choose, I can come in and I can make my allocations. So if I want to, here's another, there's another injection molding machine. So while I'm at it, we'll allocate that injection molding machine as well. We'll allocate some of these sample envelopes. We'll allocate some cans of Coca-Cola. We can go ahead and hit process. This is a processing screen, by the way. These are going to be all over the system. I like to say anything you can do with a big green button like this, you can do on a processing screen. Anything you do on a processing screen, you can automate to be able to do automatically on a schedule. Again, in the implementation process, figuring exactly where on that spectrum between human control and machine efficiency we want to fall. That's just part of a normal implementation process, and we always get that question answered in a business process map. But now you can see that I have begun to allocate and really manage my inventory at a very granular level, helping me get orders out the door when they need to go, making sure that my customers stay happy, making sure that my customers come back in 2 months to order more from me. So that is some of the power here of Acumatica's sales allocations. I want to end our time together here thinking about proper production. So I know that many members of EMDA are truly advanced manufacturers. You're building big equipment with multi-level bombs. You're doing multiple operation management with very skilled operators who need detailed instructions. We're going to see how Acumatica's bill of material, I like to call it more of a bill of manufacturing because it does include those operations, but how Acumatica's bill of material includes all that information, and then how all that rolls forward into a production order as we then move from engineering to the shop floor. So I'm going to click in here to my bill of material screen. Note that was favorited too. We see this UI stuff coming up over and over. And I'm going to click into my bill of material for this gas boiler 150. Again, a big piece of industrial machinery. That's the stock item record. I want to click into the bill of material. Big piece of machinery that is going to have a relatively complex bill of material. And you can see here that it does. It has, in this case, 5 operations. That's a lot for a demo site. I'm sure that many of you have even more complex bombs here. But you can see, starting here, that all these operations are going to have setup times and run times and machine times if we need to track machine time as well. They're going to be associated with a work center, which is going to have a standard labor cost associated with it. It's going to be associated with machines that are going to have machine costs available to them. So you can see that we're not only getting routing and planning and scheduling, but again, very good planned costing, which lets us do very good planned pricing to make sure that our margins stay where we want them to stay. And you can also see that every one of these steps has materials associated with it. So in order to cut this, I need some carbon pipe, and then I need 2 kinds of steel. And this is how much I need of them. And as I'm machining it, I don't need anything for there, but as I'm assembling it, I need even more stuff. Now, as I assemble it at the final stage, I need this temperature pressure gauge. And there's something special about that temperature pressure gauge. That is itself a subassembly. Thankfully, Acumatica, through its engineering workbench, gives us very, very good at-a-glance visibility into a subassembly structure. So I'm going to close these operations just for a sec to make it simple. So here's those 5 operations for our boiler here. But if we click into our final assembly, we see that temperature pressure gauge, which now has its own bomb. So we're looking at bomb 45 for the boiler, but we're looking at bomb 50 for the temperature pressure gauge. So you're seeing, again, another way that we're looking at information from an entirely different record, but on the screen where it's helpful. Another way Acumatica gets you that information very, very quickly and very easily as well. And then you can see here that this subassembly here does have its own components. If one of these components was a subassembly, we would indent it again and again and again and again, and however deep we would need to, up, I think, to 10 levels we can handle. So that gives a very, very detailed BOM structure there. So much for our engineering workbench and just a quick overview of that BOM structure. Once we've got all this in, we can start thinking about tooling cost as well. So this inspection might need a tool, and we need to include a tooling cost that we want to allocate to the sales order. If we have an overhead, we can include that. Or maybe we have steps here that we want to make sure that our operators are seeing. Like, don't forget the safety protocols, clean up your spills. What is that? And wear eye protection. That's very, very important. I am a firm believer in eye protection on a manufacturing floor. All of this information gets rolled up together then. When we calculate our BOM cost, say maybe we want to make these boilers in batches of 10, going to give us very, very granular planned costs, whether that's our fixed variable labor or those different kinds of costs that we were talking about there, culminating in our total and then our unit cost for our final item. So now we have our planned costing. If we want to then move onward and actually manufacture one of these things, I can click into my production orders screen and make a new production order for that boiler that we saw, the gas boiler 150. I can give that a description as well once it saves there. Say, do a demo. Maybe this is a boiler for combine. I know that we don't have steam-powered combines anymore, but again, be imaginative with me, I guess. So we're going to set our quantity to produce. Even though we set 10 earlier, maybe this time I might want to make 15, or maybe I just want to make 1. Let's just make 1. Keep it simple. You can see on this production order, we're figuring out now where this is going when we're done with it. If we're serializing this, we are going to allow pre-assigning or not. We can see the reference back to that BOM now. We can have, if we have subassemblies, we're going to be able to see those there. And the magic happens here on this totals tab, where we can see, based on that BOM, here's what our planned costs are. And then we're going to get some actual costs, and then we're going to get a variance. So we're going to be able to pool all of our variances together if we want, and get very, very good, very good variance tracking as well to get good production floor analytics. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, release it. That means just put it out to the floor. That means our production supervisor is going to see it. Cannot be released. Needs a serial number assigned, because I said assign serial numbers, didn't I? So I'm going to do that in line details. We are going to automatically generate our serial number. What to say, serial 20 there. Save that. Now I should be able to release that to the floor. And then we can actually manufacture this. We'll talk in a moment about how to do an actual material transaction, but not for now. I'm just going to move this through the production process with what's called a move transaction. I like to think about it not so much moving stock from one place to another, but moving materials or moving a production from one stage to the next. You see that our quantity is automatically populated. I'm going to go ahead and move it straight to the end. Operation 50. We can save that there, and I'll hit release. And the system is going to think for a moment. It's going to do all the inventory transactions it needs to. It's going to do all the financial transactions that it needs to. It's going to think for a moment, and then it is going to spit out this finished good into inventory. Now that it's finished, and I refresh my production order maintenance screen, we'll be able to see that the status has changed into completed now, and our totals have actually updated. We do see a little bit of variance. Where's that variance coming from? It's coming from our material variance. So for whatever reason, our materials were just a little bit cheaper this time than we thought they were going to be. If we pop into events, we can now see everything that's happened here, that I created it, I released it, I did that move transaction that created a material and a cost transaction. In fact, I clicked into a material transaction. You can see what it would look like if I were going to issue a particular lot serial to this order. In fact, I can just open that up. Here's a new one. Pull that production number, and we were talking about the Powerade. I just know that's serialized, so we'll use that, and we'll say 50/50, quantity 50, and we can save that. And now we can release that to our order, and that'll think for a sec. We'll have that lot serial tracing on the other side of it. We can see that our totals will have updated from a $45 variance. Now that we've also issued $20 of Powerade to this order, now we've dropped our variance down a little bit down to 20. So much for a full production order. If we wanted to switch back to our stock item record, we'd be able to see that number 1020 would be in order. And if we want to know what lots of information or what serial of components went into this, we can switch to lot serial hierarchy. And I can put in that piece we just created, our gas boiler. And if I run the report, we'll be able to see every lot serial number for every one of these outputs that we've ever done. So if I click to the end, here is our number 20 that we made, and we can see lot number 50/50 of that Powerade issued there. So very, very clear tracking. If something ever goes wrong, we'll be able to very clearly isolate what precisely the problem was. So with that in mind, I see our time getting just about at the end. So I'd love to pause for questions. I'd love to kick it back over to Celeste at this point, and we can think about questions if there are any out there right now.
Seen any in the chat or anything, but I have noticed that your user face is very similar to the EMDA user face. So I think that is going to be very easy for our members to use. So I know we've talked about this a lot at our spring meeting. And so I know a lot of members are very interested in this, and I think you already have several of our members too. So I guess if there are no questions, I'd like to, thank you, Christian, for sharing your expertise and giving us valuable insights on how we can better connect our teams and tools. We truly appreciate your time and your partnership with EMDA. Innovative Cloud Solutions is your ERP liaison, so feel free to reach out to them for any questions. I think we have a slide that we can show you guys for you to screenshot if you want to have that.
About that one.
There it is. Perfect.
Yep.
We will be sending out this video next week in our industry newsletter, where you can, which will also have their contact information on them, so you can reach them that way as well. But I also want to thank everybody who's joined us today and for being a part of the EMDA community. So before we wrap up, I'd like to invite you to our next webinar happening next Wednesday, April 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be hosted by one of our members, STEP. They're going to do a virtual visit to the Ag in Motion. EMDA plans on being at that farm show. So if you are even considering going, I encourage you to take a peek at this webinar. They're gonna help us with how we can plan our visit, and they'll even include funding options for you to support your trip. So thank you so much for coming, and I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. I hope you all have a great day.
Awesome.